she said, "You'll regret snooping," and then mailed me a key. That's the part no one believes, but the envelope still sits on my desk like a dare. I'm Alex Varma, 29, and I used to think regret was a distant thunder you could outrun by staying busy, by staying good. Then Markeen, 31, eggs something between a friend and a warning. Left that key and a message. Don't. I turned it over in my palm for days, feeling the grooves like a map to some place I swore I'd never return to. The apartment we once shared secrets in and learned how loudly silence can scream. Tonight, the storm has finally arrived, rattling the alley outside my window, and the key glints like a promise. If I go, I might find exactly what she wanted me to miss. If I don't, I'll never sleep again. So I pocket the dare, lace my boots, and tell myself I'm not snooping. I'm reclaiming the truth she buried. What I don't know yet is that Mara's warning wasn't for me. It was a confession. The apartment smells like old coffee and rain, a scent I used to think meant home, now threaded with something sour, like nerves left out overnight. I close the door softly, and the room settles with the uneasy quiet of a held breath. The journal waits with the stubborn gravity of a confession, but I circle it the way you circle a grave. You don't believe belongs to someone you loved. I whisper Mara's name to the dark, half expecting the walls to answer, to offer one of her riddles that always felt like love notes written in disappearing ink. She told me I'd regret snooping because snooping means you already know the answer, and you're hunting for proof, not truth. Yet my fingers itch. There are hairline fractures in the normal, a couch cushion unzipped, a painting crooked by a precise inch, an outlet cover missing a screw. I'm not discovering. I'm following the breadcrumb path she left, and I can't tell if that makes me the hunter or the bait. I crack the journal expecting ink to tumble out like accusation, but the first page holds only a single phrase. One lock for 2 doors. It's written in Mara's tidy slant, the same hand that used to label spice jars in 3T. Languages like the kitchen was a map to everywhere we'd never go. Flipping forward, I find diagrams, floor plans of this very building. Vents traced in red, arrows between 4C and 4B. A code scribbled in the margin repeats, C4, B2. My pulse sinks with the rain. She wasn't warning me away from secrets. She was daring me to find the right ones. Regret for Mara had always worn a different face. Not guilt, but time wasted on the wrong lock. I feel the key in my pocket like a living thing, and look toward the bookshelf where the wall meets the air vent. In the quiet, another sound emerges, almost polite. A faint click from next door, as if someone else just accepted an invitation. I kneel by the vent and feel the thrum of another life inches away. A television murmuring, footsteps grazing carpet, a glass set down carefully. 4B. The echo Mara wrote. I unscrew the grill with a coin. Hands steady the way they get when fear makes choices simple, and peer into the dark throat of the building. Light spills through from next door, a slim gold blade. Inside, taped along the duct, are little envelopes numbered like a countdown. The first holds a photo of Mara and a man I don't recognize, mid-30s, salt and pepper beard, standing in our kitchen, the timestamp from 3 weeks after we broke up. On the back, her handwriting. I chose wrong. The second envelope is empty, except for a key, identical to mine. The third has an address. I know then that snooping isn't what I'm doing. I'm being briefed, and whoever's in 4B just turned down their TV. The hallway feels like a throat that swallowed the storm and is deciding whether to spit me out. I pocket the duplicate key and follow the address scribbled on brittle paper. XRO isn't a word, but a naming. A storage unit 2 blocks away that shares a back wall with this building. The click I heard wasn't a neighbor, it was a padlock settling. I move fast, each step stitching me to a version of myself I promised I'd outgrow, the one who tests doors just to know if they're locked. Outside, the rain has softened to a mist that makes the neon smear like watercolor. I pass Mrs. Calder's door. It opens and she stares, then nods once like she's grading an essay only I'll read. Down the stairs, out into the night. I realize Mara's warning was a riddle with the answer embedded. You'll regret snooping, unless you look where I looked. And she looked in all the places regret hides best, behind doors we don't own. The storage yard sleeps like a tired animal. Chain link ribs rising with each passing car's breath. Echo isn't a word on a sign so much as the hush between security lights, a row of corrugated mouths numbered to infinity. My duplicate key is warm from my fist, its teeth printing crescents into my skin as if staking ownership. Unit 17 answers the paper scrawl. The padlock yields with an embarrassed cough, and cold air licks my face as the door shoulders up. Inside, the smell is cardboard and winter. Dry, papery, clean in a way that suggests someone curated even the dust. Boxes stack in tidy columns, labeled with dates that bracket our unraveling. A folding table bears a tape recorder, a cheap camcorder, and a mason jar of coins, like an offering. The rain has thinned to a whisper, and the hum of the city presses its ear to the metal walls. I register the prickling awareness of being watched, not by cameras, but by choices returning for their receipts. If Mara hid a truth here, she wanted it found by the person least prepared to keep it. I flip the camcorder open, expecting dead batteries, and get a blinking red dot, like a tiny stubborn heartbeat. The first clip is a spill of static, and then Mara's face fills the frame, shot too close, her freckles like constellations I used to navigate. If you're Alex, she says, voice steady in the way that used to calm me on buses and in bank lines, you're already in danger, or bored enough to pretend you're not. She adjusts the angle. A bearded profile enters at the set edge. Him, the man from the photo? Theo, she calls him. They argue softly about timing, about a drop in 4B, about a man whose name she doesn't speak. She glances off camera, maybe at the jar of coins, maybe at a future she already knows she won't buy. One lock for 2 doors, she repeats, almost to herself. The next tape is labeled with today's date. The idea that Mara prepared a message for a night she couldn't be sure I'd choose tastes like iron. She expected me to fail obedience and succeed at love. The tape labeled today pulls like a thread through a needle I didn't consent to. Mara's voice is smaller, as if recorded with a wall leaning in. If you find this, Alex, I picked the wrong medicine for the right wound, she says, eyes rimmed red but dry. She taps the table twice, our old signal for truth, and slides a folded paper into frame. A sketch of the building's basement with a star over a locked utility room we always thought was for mops. HO isn't just a word, she murmurs, mouth quirking. It's a man, Evander Cho. He owns the building, the storage company, and the silence. I thought Theo could help me pry it open. He thinks I'm furniture to be rearranged. She breathes out long and low. If you're here, I'm late. Don't be me. Be faster. The video ends mid-blink. My ribcage scrapes like I've been sprinting underwater. Evander Cho. The letters fall into place the way truth always does. Obvious once you're bruised by it. I pocket the map and listen for footsteps that may already be listening for me. The soft cough of rubber on wet concrete announces him before his shadow crosses the corrugated ribs. The bearded man from the journal photo, stepping into the aisle like a correction. Alex, he says, and my name sounds strange in his mouth, like he borrowed it on the way in. Theo reigns. 35. Private compliance, which is a polite way to say, I clean up people's messes when they're profitable. He doesn't reach for a weapon. He reaches for the camcorder and then stops, measuring the space between us as if it were a ledger. Mara trusted you to ignore her, he adds. and there's something like rue in it. I keep my hands visible and my feet ready. Theo glances at the map peeking from my pocket, at the jar of coins like an altar to small mistakes. "Co's awake," he says. "You opened a door that only closes on fingers." The rain lifts, and the silence is so clean, I can count the beats of his breathing. "Do you regret snooping yet?" he asks. "Ask Mara," I answer, and decide not to run. We walk the verbal edge where truce and trap share a view. Worny, muir, mew. Theo sketches history in quick, brutal strokes. Evander Cho launders data, the way others wash linens, siphoning tenant lives through routers and vents, then folding them into accounts too clean to question. Mara got close enough to smell the bleach. She thought a story could save her, he says, and there's a bruise in his voice that might be guilt. The aisle brightens as a security cart turns the corner. Theo's eyes flick toward the exit. "Decide," he says, "partner or problem?" I choose the third word Mara taught me, witness. I pivot, sprint to the side gate, and vault the chain link with a graceless climb that leaves my palms bitten by winter. The cart's horn protests. Theo doesn't shout. He watches me go like a man comparing outcomes and never betting the favorite. I land in the alley, lungs burning, map crinkling against my chest. When I reach the building, 4B's door isn't just ajar. It's grateful, as if it's been waiting for a hand that knows how to knock. 4B has the careful emptiness of a stage reset between acts. Shoes align like soldiers beside the mat. The sink is bone dry, a towel folded with military remorse. The air tastes faintly of bleach and citrus, the scent of someone rehabbing a narrative. I pass a bookshelf dressed in decoy titles, cookbooks with hollow middles, travel guides to cities that never stamp your passport, and find a painting hung with an arrogance that invites suspicion. Behind it, a shallow niche yawns, and inside, a motel key on a cracked leather tag, a passport bearing Mara's face under the name May Kieran, and a single photo that knocks the oxygen sideways. Mara and me, asleep on the couch, hand bracketed on her knee, taken from a high angle we never set. On the back, never doubt what I chose first. Regret lifts its head and pretends to be comfort. The key fob's address matches the map's starched certainty. In the window glass, I catch a ghost of myself making promises I can't afford, and I pocket the proof that Mara loved me alongside evidence she became someone who couldn't. Mrs. Calder's knock is softer than guilt and twice as certain. She steps into 4B as if the apartment recognizes her dignity, robe cinched, silver bun refusing disorder. I told her this would chew her, she says, by way of hello, eyes flicking to the niche, to the key. She calls Mara, the nice girl with the hurricane smile, and Theo, the man who thinks apologies are chess moves. She says Evander Cho visited at odd hours, never sweating even in July, leaving the hallway colder than he found it. You weren't meant to fetch this alone, she adds, resting a warm hand on my elbow. There's a tremor in her voice when she admits she slipped notes under Mara's door that were never returned. I'm old enough to regret only the silences, she says. If you mean to be loud, do it tonight. She presses a small brass whistle into my palm, the kind teachers used when gym class still chose you last. For when a door doesn't answer, it fits beside my keys like a new tooth in an old bite. Back in Forsay, the map snaps into a grid where fear becomes useful. EC4B2 echo isn't poetry, it is coordinates. Circuit C4 controls our unit. B2 feeds the utility closet in the basement, and if the notation is honest, the server that hums in a locked room we've walked past for years. Echo is both the owner and the method. Sound travels through ducts, data travels through us. I trace lines with a pen the way kids connect stars into animals. The vent system is a nervous system. Mara found its pulse and realized it throbbed under everyone's skin. Theo will either meet me there, or already be there, turning the lock with hands that have opened too many. I pocket the brass whistle and the motel key, tuck my coat, and kill the lights. For the first time tonight, I admit I'm afraid of not what I'll find, but that I'll understand it too easily. How simple it can be to watch people through their own windows and call it caretaking. I lock 4C and head for the stairs that keep secrets like teeth. Our teeth. The stairwell inhales me and forgets to exhale. Halfway to the basement, the building blinks. A power hiccup that turns steps into suggestion and the handrail into a rumor. I freeze, listening between heartbeats for shoes that aren't mine. A door closes below, careful like a doctor's voice. I thumb the whistle and choose not to test its promise just yet. The emergency lights wake in a bruised red, revealing dust like snowfall, and a shadow crosses the landing. A tall man pausing to adjust his sleeve. Theo? The outline fits, but so would any danger I gave a name to. I descend sideways, back brushing the cold wall, and at the next landing the figure is gone, replaced by the thin electric purr of something alive behind metal. The utility door waits with the patience of a good liar. I press my ear to it and hear a sound that's almost kind. Mara's voice, tinny, looping. It's not a ghost. It's a recording. She's reading the terms of our lease like scripture, and suddenly the contract feels like a prayer we never understood. The utility room yields to the duplicate key with ugly grace. Inside, the temperature drops as if the machines are drinking heat for sport. Racks blink with polite lights. A hummingbird, chorus of fans makes conversation impossible. On a folding chair sits a cassette player, like the one in Echo. A sticky note on its face. Press when safe. I press because safety is a religion I never joined. Mara's voice threads the air, calm as weather, reading clauses about data optimization, services, behavioral analytics, legal words for theft that takes the shape of care. If you're Alex, she ends, you'll think this is about trust. It is. Trust that you're not the only person I loved. The message folds into white noise, and a footstep behind me replies. I turn to find Theo framed by the door, rain on his shoulders, eyes like someone deciding whether to stay or finally walk into the ocean. "To's coming," he says, "with people who don't do regret." We stand on the thin bridge between confession and strategy and decide not to jump. The motel clings to the freeway like a barnacle that learned neon. Room 12 smells of old soap and nights that couldn't quite forget themselves. The key turns with the sad confidence of a habit. Inside, a lamp paints a yellow triangle over a bedspread patterned with mistakes. On the bathroom counter, a towel is dampened pink at the edge, not blood so much as a story told recently and rinsed in a hurry. There's a note in Mara's upper left corner handwriting. "Don't make this romantic." It asks me to take the shoebox beneath the bed and leave everything else breathing. Inside the box, a thumb drive, a list of tenant names with annotations that read like a physician's chart for privacy, and a photo of Evander Cho smiling in a way that refuses to include his eyes. "If you see Theo," the note continues, "listen to him until it hurts." I sit on the bed and it answers with a groan that could be laughter. The freeway's tire song threads the walls. I don't know if I'm closer to her or finally behind. Her letter runs 12 sentences and an entire geography. She met Theo at a tenants' rights clinic, where his badge said consultant and his eyes said exit wound. They traded favors until favors began to look like plans. "I wanted Cho's empire to confess," he writes. "But empires don't beg. They invoice." She describes late nights listening to vents as if they were seashells, catching fragments of conversations that sounded like prayer and purchase orders. She frames me as the only person she trusted to hate her for this. "Regret," she adds, "isn't about what I did to you. It's about what I taught you to survive." The last line lands like a lit match. If you come to the basement, bring a witness. I think of Mrs. Calder's whistle, of the way Theo watches doors, of my own reflection splitting in motel glass. The thumb drive glints like a small, precise future. On the back of the letter, she's drawn a keyhole with 2 doors growing from it like wings. I fold the paper and it resists, as if it prefers to stay open. The parking lot is a spilled deck of cars when Theo slides from the dark like a card you didn't know was wild. He doesn't apologize for following me. I don't apologize for expecting it. We stand in the neon drizzle, 2 men laundering each other's excuses. Co's movements got strange after you opened the unit, he says, tapping his phone and showing nothing, because showing is dangerous. He's meeting upstairs, apartment 6EEA, the penthouse he pretends he doesn't occupy. I say Evander's name out loud, and the air tightens. Theo confesses a regret that isn't photogenic. He thought he could save Mara by being useful to the man who would break her. I mistook proximity for leverage, he says. Classic rookie sin for a man my age. There's a slit of tenderness in him when he asks if the motel towel was red or metaphor. Metaphor, I answer, and he nods as if we both passed a test. The plan arranges itself between us like a borrowed suit. Go home, go low, steal from the basement, climb. We enter the building like a memory trying to be polite. The basement door greets us with the hum of unbothered machines. Theo works the lock in a practiced half-second. I thread Mara's thumb drive into a server port that looks designed for denial. The screen that should belong to a maintenance console blooms with tenant names and a pulsing ledger of engagement events that reads like a surveillance calendar. Wake times, purchases, arguments, lullabies. Cho sells prediction, Theo says, voice flat. Customers don't buy data. They buy the illusion that they're profits. He pulls a cable and the hum changes key. A small panic in metal. I start a copy that crawls across the progress bar like a wounded thing. Upstairs, a door slams in a way that vibrates pipes. I imagine Mara's feet on these same tiles. The heel dents history never bothered to erase. We wait in the blue glow as if it were noon, and we were ordinary, letting a theft chew its way into a truth. The bar ticks to 90%, and the lift groans alive. At 99%, the copy pauses like a held breath that refuses to be exhaled. The elevator dings and delivers quiet instead of people, a theatrical choice that makes terror more articulate. Theo tilts his head, listening to a frequency I can't hear. He's stalling us with silence, he says, and touches the scar on his knuckle like it's a prayer bead. The bar shivers to completion, and the screen goes dark by its own decision. On the console table, centered like a gift, lies a fresh Polaroid that wasn't there a blink ago. Me in the server glow, Theo at my shoulder, taken from the vent. On the white border, in Mara's hand, recent ink still damp. You're almost there. Don't confuse altitude with safety. It is either a blessing or soft command. Theo pockets the drive. I pocket the photo. The utility door clicks from the other side, a lock engaging that didn't exist this morning. The servers keep humming like obedient animals. We look up towards 6A, where Evander Cho keeps his weather, and begin to climb into it. The elevator to 6AA rises like an argument we can no longer postpone, each floor number winking its ascent to consequence. Theo keeps his hands visible, but the set of his shoulders is a shield he's been polishing for years. I think about altitude and safety as a married pair that never speak. The higher we go, the more the building sounds like a throat clearing. When the doors open, the hallway is museum quiet, all soft carpet and the hush money of good insulation. A single camera blinks. Theo looks up and smiles without warmth. He likes to be seen seeing, he says. At the end, 6AA wears its door like a tuxedo, lacquered and dressed for power. I press my ear and hear 2 voices. Evander's, measured, silk with a wire through it, and a woman's that catches me wrong until I realize it's Mara, recorded, looping the same line. Consent is a contract. Theo meets my eyes, nods once, and we use the duplicate key that numbers never promised. The door yields. Inside smells like citrus and battery, a fresh storm curated for guests who believe weather can be owned. 6AA spreads out like a set built for a confession that never happened. Floor-to-ceiling windows hold the city in glass. The furniture is confident and low, the kind that insists you've already agreed. Evander Cho stands by a marble island as if it were a courtroom he owns. Mid-40s, immaculate charcoal suit, tie so black it drinks light. He greets Theo by first name and me by my caution. "Mr. Varma," he says, "you brought your mirror." He gestures at the vent grill above us where a lens winks, and at the speakers soft spooling Mara's voice into civility. "I curate echoes," he adds, unashamed. Theo answers by placing the thumb drive on the counter like a live wire. "Refund," he says. Evander's smile doesn't move past the idea of teeth. "You stole my product," he replies. "And I stole nothing you didn't volunteer by living loudly. I think of lullabies in the server logs, of fights logged as events, and feel a private heat. I don't want to name anger, because anger is a luxury." She told me I'd regret snooping, I say. "I'm aiming elsewhere." Evander pours tea with the steadiness of a surgeon pretending warmth. "You think your outrage is currency," he says, sliding a cup toward me that I don't touch. "But markets prefer metrics." He taps a tablet, and our lives arrange into graphs that blush when we do. I imagine Mara here, smiling without her eyes, coaxing the numbers to confess. "She was very good," Evander admits as if praising a violinist. "Too good to waste on journalism." The word lands like a slap on a saint. Theo leans forward, voice low. "Turn it off," he says, meaning the vents, the cameras, the industry. Evander sighs, theatrical and practiced. "I don't turn weather off for a forecast," he replies. I slide the Polaroid from my pocket and lay it next to the drive. Ink now dry, but accusation fresh. "You missed this angle," I tell him. And for a second, the performance drops. He calculates loss. Then the door behind us opens, and Mrs. Calder steps in, robe replaced by a proper coat. Silver bun, undisturbed, whistle on a cord at her throat. "You invited a witness," she says. "Good." Mrs. Calder doesn't sit. She lets her presence do the leaning. "Mr. Cho," she says, "you own these walls, but not what traveled through them." Her voice finds the corners of the room and dusts them. Evander's expression shifts to the version designed for public meetings, all listening in measured empathy. "We optimize for safety," he offers, sliding into a script made from comfortable lies. "We prevented 3 break-ins this month." Mrs. Calder nods, unimpressed. "You also recorded lullabies and arguments, and that time my neighbor practiced apologies to a closed door." Her gaze grazes me, a benediction of fury. "Consent is a contract," Mara repeats from the speakers, and Mrs. Calder answers aloud, "I'm canceling mine." She lifts the whistle. The sound she makes is small, but specific, piercing the vents like a needle through cloth. Lights in the ceiling wink. Somewhere a relay gives up. Evander's jaw tightens. Theo smiles for real, a quick slash of relief. "Altitude isn't safety," Mrs. Calder says. "It's a better view of the fall." For once, Evander has nothing smart to sell. The whistle's echo is still thinning when the elevator delivers 2 men heavy with certainty. Security, dressed in black, hands like answers. Evander shifts from host to weather system, summoning a storm with a glance. Theo steps between, and I understand the currency he's spent his life hoarding. Not courage, but timing. "Record this," I say, palming the camcorder from my coat and setting it on the island where the tea still warms the air. The lens blinks awake. The little red dot declares history open for business. "Mr. Cho," I add, voice louder. "How much for my lullabies?" He smiles, wrong and bright, and in that moment the power is cinematic. whose frame survives. Mrs. Calder positions herself within the shot like a headline. The guards hesitate, trained to fear cameras more than guilt. Evander calculates again, then smooths his tie. "You won't like the cost of this scene," he warns. "You can't afford the sequel." "We're writing a different genre," I say, and let the silence after the line do the heavy lifting. The city leans in against the glass to hear. Evander tries to pivot the narrative into a ledger. Offers, counter-offers, a settlement shaped like silence. He tells a story where he is modernity's custodian, and we are quaint objects covered in dust and feelings. The camcorder makes a soft mechanical purr that steadies me more than breath. Theo, who once mistaken proximity for leverage, finds a better use. He names numbers, account IDs, shell companies, the server labels we copied, each syllable a bite mark on Evander's polish. Mrs. Calder speaks for the tenants in verbs, not abstractions. You recorded, you profited, you endangered. Evander corrects us gently, like a tutor repairing grammar. Optimized, monetized, protected. I hold the Polaroid where the lens can see it, and say Mara's name until it refuses to be just data. Maybe this is what regret looks like when it changes hands. Not apology, but a camera refusing to blink. The guards breathe heavier. The room acquires a new scent, something like metal warmed by anger. "Call the police," Evander orders at last. Weary king tone. "Please," Mrs. Calder replies. "Bring a bigger audience." While we wait for the sirens we refused in Act 1, Evander performs civility, offering bottled water as if dehydration were our enemy. I decline, and the refusal makes a sound in the room, something brittle toll. Theo turns the camcorder slightly to frame the vent, the lens that watched us watch ourselves. He will allege trespass, Evander says, schooling the future and interference with systems crucial to resident safety. Mrs. Calder counters with the precision only a long life can sharpen. Safety that steals is theft with better shoes. I hear the first distant wail of a city waking to us. I wonder, not for the first time, if Mara is alive to hear it, if her warning about regret was also a promise about survival. The elevator dings. Nobody arrives. Evander frowns like a conductor whose orchestra obeys physics but not taste. Theo meets my eyes, a question suspended there. Do we ride this down to the lobby, or let the police climb up into our framing? Altitude isn't safety, I say, borrowing Mara's ink. Make them climb. The police arrive like an argument with uniforms. 2 officers step out. One young enough to still be surprised by people, the other older, gaze doing math on everything. Evander unveils his language of ownership. Mrs. Calder deploys her grammar of harm. Theo is the bridge that finally carries weight, handing over the drive with its ledger of engagement events and their sacred disguises. I present the camcorder and the live recording of a man threatening to price our privacy. The older officer's jaw moves as if chewing a grudge he once had to swallow. We're going to need it, he says, to nobody and to the city. Evander recommends his own experts. Independent, the officer replies. And for a moment the building loosens its grip on my ribs. The younger cop looks at me like an apology that learned to wear a badge. You okay? He asks. I tell the smallest true thing. I am awake. The room's temperature climbs back toward human. Outside, dawn begins the slow betrayal of night. Statements bloom into paperwork, which is another word for theater that admits props. We talk in paragraphs, revisiting vents, contracts, and the basement that sings with fans. Sergeant Collins asks careful questions and writes reckless truths. Evander's lawyer, conjured by phone, arrives in a gray suit like rain, advising nouns. Procedures, liabilities, injunctions. Mrs. Calder corrects verbs. Exploited, recorded, sold. Theo owns his complicity like a scar that finally gets sunlight. I mistook the perimeter for the point, he says. The sergeant watches Evander's face when Mara's name is spoken. Something flickers, not like guilt, but like annoyance at an unfinished task. Is Mara Keen in danger? I ask too fast, revealing my inventory. Evander's lawyer smiles with no vitamins in it. We can't comment on hypotheticals, he says. Mrs. Calder places her palm over mine on the island, an anchor disguised as touch. The city outside pales, a body coming to. If regret is a currency, we are blowing it on a sunrise that might buy us nothing and still be worth the spend. By the time the officers secure the penthouse for ongoing investigation, the building's hum has changed. It feels less like surveillance and more like plumbing, a demotion that tastes like breath. Evander leaves with his lawyer and the choreography of men who do not expect endings they did not design. In the quiet he leaves behind, the speakers cough and die. Mara's voice ends mid-consonant, like a door caught by wind. Theo pockets the camcorder and looks shorter, as if adrenaline were a posture. Mrs. Calder requests coffee, like a general requests air support. We ride down together, past floors where we once slept through our own broadcast. In the lobby, tenants gather with the dawn, a collage of mornings, babies, backpacks, thermoses, the particular bravery of routine. I want to tell them we stopped a storm, but truth is stingier. We documented weather. Mrs. Calder squeezes my arm. You did more than look, she says. You made looking cost. I nod, and in the condensation of a lobby window, I finally allow myself a hope shaped like Mara, not being done. Morning divides the city into those who slept and those who traded sleep for a story. We are the latter, drifting back into 4C like astronauts returning to gravity's old rules. The apartment smells like itself again, coffee and rain, but layered with the ghost of server room cold. I set the Polaroid on the table beside Mara's journal, and for the first time, I read the margins like scripture. In a cramped corner, she wrote a line that was not meant for court and will never belong to evidence. Love is how we audit ourselves when no one else can. It lands with a private clang. Theo perches on the arm of the couch, texting someone who might be a lawyer or the quiet part of his conscience. Mrs. Calder sits with her coffee and examines the map as if it were a quilt that can still be mended. What now? Theo asks. And I hear in it the fear of after. We send the copies, I say. We tell the tenants. We get loud on purpose. And privately, quietly, I decide to find Mara like it's an exam I am ready to pass. We work. Work is unglamorous and saves more lives than speeches. Theo slices the drive's contents into packets and ships them to reporters who will confirm, redact, and argue our commas into swords. Mrs. Calder drafts a tenant notice in block letters sturdy enough to carry worry without collapsing. She refuses euphemisms the way some refuse sugar. I call the clinic Mara once volunteered at, pretended to need advice, and left my name like a breadcrumb in a city that eats bread. The sky climbs from pewter to pewter with hope. Between emails, I press the Polaroid flat and remember sleeping without cameras for the first time in years. A reply pings. An address, a place on the river where meetings happen that don't want names. Theo raises an eyebrow that contains at least 3 warnings. You'll regret snooping, he says, echoing the prophecy we've outlived. Probably, I answer, putting on my coat. But regret is a debt. Someone pays. I'd like a refund. Mrs. Calder hands me the whistle, and for the second time it fits like a tooth. The riverfront warehouse is a cliché because crime and journalism both love good lighting. Early sun slices through broken panes, turning dust into a cathedral of tiny witnesses. Mara stands there as if she grew from the concrete, hood up, coat too thin, eyes bright with a sleepless arithmetic. 31, still the same hurricane smile, but tempered into weather you can stand in. I said you'd regret snooping, she greets, and the smile doesn't reach the part of her that knows we nearly didn't make it. I want to say 100 things and choose none that begin with I. She hugs me like a fact, and then steps back to examine the damage in my posture. You did the hard part, she says. You brought daylight. The apology that lives in my mouth curls into a question instead. Why Theo? She nods toward the door, where he waits in the car, silhouette patient. Because he owed a debt, and I needed change, she says, because he knows every Locke's favorite lie. We stand breathing in the river, each of us exhaling a version of the same future. We talk without the camera's hunger. Mara unspools the weeks I was not invited to. The meetings where Evander tried to recruit her as a curator of the acceptable. The nights she slept in room 12 and practiced survival like a language. She never pretends she didn't choose to leave. She admits she chose wrong and then chose again. Regret isn't static, she says. It moves if you do. She shows me a second drive, redundancy as religion, and a notebook of names who built the echo machine one invoice at a time. This doesn't fix what I did to us, she adds, eyes steady. It fixes what he did to everyone. I tell her about Mrs. Calder's whistle and Evander's tea, and the moment the guards feared a red light more than a raised voice. The river hits the pier with tiny applause. We promise nothing heroic, just the work already underway. Statements, tenants, daylight. When we step outside, Theo gets out of the car and meets Mara's gaze like a man trained to flinch and choosing not to. They nod, an exchange of receipts. Or to the nature of the deceits. By noon, the story has teeth. Reporters call, lawyers posture. Tenants gather in the lobby with copies of their own lives stapled into awareness. Evander releases a statement about temporary service interruptions and an unfortunate misunderstanding. Phrases that sound like someone trying to rename gravity. We stand on the building's steps and let microphones turn our mouths into bridges. Mrs. Calder speaks first, her voice an instrument tuned by years. Theo follows, careful and plain, carving his complicity into a warning label. I read Mara's sentence, the one about love as an audit, because sometimes the right line is a lockpick. Cameras blink like 1,000 tiny consciences. Across the street, a car idles with the patience of a threat and then leaves because daylight is expensive. Later, in Forsay, we sit on the floor, backs to the couch, and listen to the building learn to breathe its unrecorded air. You'll regret snooping, she told me. Maybe I do. But regret is her old roommate now, not mine. The one living with regret tonight is the man who mistook echoes for consent and got recorded by his own weather.